Okay. So hi guys, welcome to today's session. Uh, this is one of the sessions held by Flutter Friday, and today's session will be having Danvik take us through Flutter Widgets. And the two communities here today is DSC Moi and DSC Kibabi University. And I'd like to give Damian a chance to maybe say hi and welcome guys before we start.
Hi everyone. Okay, I'm Damian Bwire from Kibabi University. I'm the DSC co-lead dealing in Flutter, and actually I'm so impressed to be part of you for Ivy for having allowing us to attend this session with you. I've just come to learn so that I can share to my members, to those who are in the session, and those maybe who are fixed and cannot attend the session now. So without wasting any time, I just appreciate and sit back and enjoy the session. Thank you, Ivy.
Okay, you're welcome, Damian and Kibabi University. So I think we can start the session. Hand over the session to Danvik.
Okay, so actually today I don't have a lot of slides because today was supposed to be something practical. We've been doing the introductory bits. We did learn how to use Dart and basically some concepts in that. And basically the first session we did setting up of your machine for Flutter development. So today we'll be doing mostly practical stuff. I'll share my screen. I will be able to do that. I'm also glad to have Kibabi on board, Kibabi University. I was a student at St. Mary's, so Kibabi University just used to be next to us. So I'm glad to have you guys on board. So let me just share my screen. I hope you guys can see my screen. Yeah, so today my notes will not be on a slide. These are just my reminders. They are the notes that I put in place to be able to sorry, so the slides that these are just my notes that I put in place so that it can just remind me of where to start and how to go. So today we're learning about widgets, and something to know about Flutter is that everything in Flutter is a widget. So we need to understand what are widgets and basically the different types of widgets. So I'll just open my screen, create the first app, then we can do it from a practical standpoint. So from there, that's when we'll understand. Okay, so let me just first of all open my terminal. So for you to create a Flutter app, all you need to do is let me go to the correct folders. So for you to create a Flutter app, all you need to do is do something called Flutter create. If you have installed Flutter on your device, all you need to do is Flutter create, then write the name of the project that you want to create. So I'll just do, since this is a DSC, I'll just call it widgets. Then when I create, it will scaffold all the information of the app. It will take some time to install a number of dependencies, then we'll be good to go. So we can either we can use any of those IDs or text editors that I had mentioned earlier.
So hi Danvik, I think we've lost you. So let's give him like 2 or 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry about that. So I don't know what's up. I think I was just talking on and on. So I don't know where I left you guys off. So
you are creating a new Flutter app.
all the way back there. Okay. So, but you are able to see my stream but not hear me, right?
Yeah.
Neither. Okay. So for I think if you're able to see how I created the Flutter app, all I did was run Flutter create. This is the name of the command. Flutter create, then the name of the app that you want to create. It will scaffold everything for you. It will generate the folder and put everything in place and give you, at the end, it will give you some instructions on how to get started. So I was just going through basically what is inside the Flutter app. So since Flutter allows us to build for Android, iOS, and even web, there'll be folders for those specific platforms. So each platform has its own folder that you put all the configurations that are needed for that platform. So here we have Flutter Android. Here we have like basically the Android folder. We have the iOS folder, which is contains all the configuration and the output that will come out of the publish or running the iOS device, iOS app. Then we have the lib folder. The lib folder contains all your code. Basically, this is where you'll be working in most of the time. This is the folder itself, lib. So this is your library of your source code. And then we have pubspec.yaml. Pubspec.yaml is where you put the configuration about your app. That is just a YAML file is basically just similar somehow to a JSON file where you put all the information that pertains to your app, let's say dependencies and whatnot. We'll have a look at that. Then there's something like pubspec.lock. Pubspec.lock is usually used to lock your dependencies to a given version. Basically, if you are building an app, you would want, you'd like say this, I'm using this dependency and this version of the dependencies. So pubspec.lock, its work is to lock that dependency so that if anyone downloads your app, they know that this app that I've been given, it works with this version of the dependencies that I'm depending on. In case maybe there are changes, you don't want your app to break by someone just downloading the latest version of those dependencies, and then they may be incompatibilities. So pubspec.lock is to lock those dependencies to a given version, to a version that we know works. Then we have a test folder. Test folder is where you write your tests to test the app and make sure that everything is running correctly. If anyone has heard of or done test-driven development, so this is where you'll be testing your code to make sure that it works. Then finally, we have web. This is in Flutter 2 has joined the stable branch. So right now you can just build for Flutter web very easily. So having introduced the folder structure, we can just like now go into the code and see how everything works. So I'll ask to, instead of using VS Code, which I'm not very comfortable with, I'll go with Android Studio. So I'll just open the folder that we created, which is DSC widgets. So code, playground, DSC widgets, open. Okay. So let me expand that. So when we come to our the main .dat is the main file that will come with a newly created folder or a newly created Flutter project. And usually it comes with a demo project that you can use just to test out how things work. So we will just test out this provided app and see and make sure that it runs. Then we will explore how it actually works. So before we do anything, let me just open an emulator. I hope you guys can still hear me. Just confirm. Yeah, I am unmuted. I'm not muted. No. Let me switch emulators. I want to use this one. Okay. So let's try out and see what will come out of this newly created folder, newly created app. So remember, when we were doing the Dart tutorial, we remember that we say that the main entry point to any Dart project is the main function. So this is the main function. This is the function that will be called immediately you start running your project. So basically, by clicking on this play icon, the compilation of the project started. So while we're waiting we are waiting for it to build. We can just go through. Let me just first of all delete all the comments here because
Hi, Danvik.
them. Hello.
I can't see your screen. I can only see your cursor.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
How about now?
Now I can see your screen.
Okay. Okay then. So as I was saying, the main entry point of any Dart file is the main function. So I just wanted to first of all run the default app that comes with a new scaffolding of the project so that we can see, basically explore how everything works before we go into understanding how the whole thing was made. So we'll just wait a bit for the app to compile. So in the meantime, I'll just be deleting these comments that are in the project so that everything can become a bit clear. Okay, so basically, in Flutter, we say everything is a widget. You'll realize that even your project itself, even the first app itself is a widget. So you'll see something called stateless widgets. We'll see stateful widgets. So this is what we're exploring today. So in Flutter, there are two types of widgets. There are stateful widgets and stateless widgets. A stateful widget is one that will basically have changes during the course of running your project. And a stateless widget is basically anything that doesn't change during the course of your project. Let's say, for example, something like a button. A button may be a stateless widget because it's just something that is there on the screen, and you can just basically click on it, and it will bring some effect elsewhere. But the button itself is a stateless widget. So you'll see even the app itself, the main app itself is a stateless widget. So Flutter, in the main function, the first thing you will see is basically a function called run app, which is part of the Flutter library itself, and it will basically run the first app the first widget that it will be told to run. So in this case, it's called my app. So my app is basically just a stateless widget. A stateless widget basically just means that nothing will change during the course of its running. So I'll try to refactor this code and make it a bit clear. I don't know if I should just stop running first and then we go through the code. Seems to be taking quite a bit of time. Okay, let me try, instead of running Android Studio, I think it's instead of running Android the Android emulator, let me just try to run the iOS because it's a bit lighter on my device. So the output will be the same, since Flutter will just instead of just developing for Android, will just develop for iOS, but the visual part of the project will just be the same. That is basically the advantage of Flutter. You build one code and it will build for different systems. So when you come to the project, first of all, you'll see like there's a material app. Material app is basically the main widget that will run material. Basically, material is the design style of Android, but still the app can run on iOS. So there's another app called Cupertino app, which will be basically the equivalent of the same app for iOS. When I run a material app, basically that widget will run an app that is very similar to Android. If I run material and if I run Cupertino, instead it will look iOS style app. The advantage of Flutter is that it has tried to bring together all these design styles into one, and you don't have to worry about the specifics of each platform. You can just build one and it will run on both. So I think we are seeing a bit of progress there. Thank you. So yeah, first of all, this is the project that comes when you run the. I hope you can still see my screen. This is the project that comes when you run a new Flutter project. Everything seems to be deciding to run right now. So while I'm doing the demo, so here we just have a demo project. You'll see Flutter demo. It has the home page. Then you have pushed the button this many times. Then if I press the button down here, you will see that it's counting the number of times I've pressed the button. So this is the construct of a Flutter application. We have the common types of widgets, and first of all, if you see my screen, you can see there's basically the blue bar on top there. This is what we call an app bar. An app bar will contain the title of the project and all the menus that come with that project. Maybe you may have a menu here. If I click, maybe there's a side menu that will come and show information about that. So that is set up in the app bar. Then this is the body of your screen. This is the homepage screen. So you can have as many screens as you want, but this is just the example of how it looks. So the first thing we do here is we'll run the material app. Material app will just set up everything, the design style of if I change that and save, if I save, you'll see that the homepage title will change. So this is our homepage. Our homepage is actually a stateful widget. So I will, for the sake of understanding, I will, instead of having just one file, I will split this into two files. So I will cut that, and basically, apart from the main.dat, I will create a new file, a new .dat file. So let me just create a new file, call it homepage. When naming Flutter project, Flutter app, Flutter files, we usually use, I don't know if this is Snakecat, where you're using underscores. So that is, I'll call it home-page.dat. Then I'll paste the information about this here. Then do some imports just to make sure that everything is running correctly. And then I'll come here, and this is how you get to include that page inside your main app. So I will import, then I say homepage. That after including homepage.dat, there's no error here, and we can see that it has rebuilt again, and everything is working as expected. So my app is actually a stateless widget. A stateless widget, you'll see that all it has is a build method. The build method is what is run when you run the project, and it will basically just create the user interface. So this is the material app, and it's a stateless widget because nothing will change during the course of running this project. So there's no need of having it as a stateful widget. The reason why we're calling this a stateful widget is because here we have a counter. The counter is basically this number that shows how many times I've clicked this button. And the reason why this page is stateful is because there's this counter that keeps changing every time I click this button. So it contains state. So the state is what basically changes during the course of running the app. So you'll notice that a stateful widget will actually be divided into two. It will have like two classes. The widget has two classes. First of all, there's the first app, which just the first class, which extends a stateful widget, and that is all that it does. All that does it has create state. Create state actually creates the state for that widget. That is all that it contains. And then inside a stateful widget, inside the state class, the state class will usually, by convention, you can change this but by convention, it usually has an underscore. An underscore, anything that starts with an underscore in that basically just means that it's private. So this is a private class. It can't be accessed from, let's say, from the main page. Let's say if right now I come here and try to access, change this to underscore my homepage, you'll see that it has an error because this class is private to that specific file and it cannot be accessed outside that file. So that is basically how how things are set up. So any state class is not, the state class itself is not a widget, it's just a class that will contain information about how to build that widget. So the widget itself is homepage and it's contained in a different class. So any state class extends state and basically state of type homepage or my homepage. So that's basically it. And then it has a counter, which basically is just an integer. Then we have a function here that when, so we have a function here that will increment that counter. We'll come back to it later. So you remember we said that an app, any page in a material app will contain, number one, a scaffold. The scaffold is basically the whole page, how the whole page will look. Then inside the page we have an app bar. So the app bar is the blue colored part of the screen, which is just basically shows the title of the app and any menus or any other information on top that you may want to show. If we have like multiple screens, you will see here a back button, which when clicked, it will go back to the previous page. If you interact with any Android project or Android app, now that most people use Android, you'll have seen that. You'll see any page having a title and a back button, if in case you are navigating. So here we just have, let's assume these widgets. We have a widget called center, which will center align things. We have a widget called column, which will just align things in columns. We'll come to them later. Then here we have a very interesting icon widget here called floating action button. This is the floating icon button, action button, sorry. The floating action button is just basically, it's just shown on top of your page. You can place it anywhere. So for example, I don't know, I think the thing is alignment. I'll try to look for a way to put it in different places. Elevation, focus color. Oh, sorry. I don't think it's set there. So basically, let's just assume it's usually by default is on the bottom right. So when I click this button, you'll see it has, number one, a tooltip, which will just show what it does. Doesn't show anything else. it has a child. Anything in Flutter that you see when we call a child, basically is something that is contained inside that widget. So inside that widget, we have an icon, and the icon will be the icon add, which will be just will be put inside the floating icon button. So, and first and lastly, we have an onPressed. OnPressed is basically a callback function that when called, it will now execute the function when you click this button. So in this case, we are just incrementing the counter. Now let's go to the definition of this increment counter. Let's go to definition. So you'll notice that here we are incrementing the counter by just saying counter plus plus. So counter plus equals 1. So if it's 10, then we click, then it adds 1 to it, it becomes 11. But you'll notice that anything in the, if we want to track state of this project, of this app, of this counter, we call this inside a function called setState. SetState, its work is to basically keep track of and basically mutate state. If I call this function without this, without wrapping it inside the setState function, and I just clicked it again, you'll notice that nothing happens. That's because setState, without having setState to track the changes that has happened to that counter, basically nothing will have changed. The app will not recognize that change. So setState is just used to track the state that is there. So let's now deconstruct this app and then try to just build our own. Now start doing the common widgets. So today we are supposed to cover the common widgets that are used in Flutter. So I will first of all just destroy everything here. See how to create a stateful widget or a stateless widget. So here I'm going to create just a stateless widget. So usually, if you're using Android Studio or you have installed Flutter on VS Code, it will have some shortcuts for creating a stateless widget. So if I click here, it will just create for me a stateless widget. Usually, naming of a class in Dart, as we said, you usually name it in camel case with every. So basically, this is how camel case looks like. Every word starts with a capital. So here I will say home, then page. Usually the naming of a widget is usually the same name as the name of that file. And usually the naming of the file has underscores and it's in small letters, but the naming of the class, this is just by convention. You can name it the way you want, but conventionally, this is how things are named in Flutter or in Dart. So we can create a scaffold here. Let's just first of all run this and see what will happen. First of all, I need to import this homepage here. So, sorry, I was supposed to name it like that. Let's remove the title and just have it as a clear app. So without anything, without a scaffold, if I just have a container, or basically the default widget that comes is a container, the page has no structure at all. That's why we need a scaffold. And in fact, if you just put a scaffold, first of all, without anything inside, and basically just run it again, you'll realize that it just becomes white, just because it has recognized that we are using a scaffold. We will see how to change the colors and whatnot. So first thing in an app, in a scaffold is the app bar. The app bar is usually just comes with an, you just define a project, a widget called app bar, which is actually in Dart itself, and you define your title. So also the title, sorry, the title doesn't take a text. It actually takes another widget called You can use any widget here, but for us, we are just going to use text. So text is another widget that is used to render text on the screen. So if I do that, then we run again. It will basically show the widget there. The next thing we have is a body. So inside the body, this is where basically the meat of your app, where the contents of your app will be. This will just be showing where on the app your user is. Let's say your app has multiple pages, then you need the app bar to show a title of where the user is. And then the body is basically the contents of that page. We can have here a text and say, let's say, welcome to Flutter Widgets. So let's run that. You'll see it will just put text on the screen here saying welcome to Flutter Widgets. So there are different types of common widgets in Flutter. So number one, we have like basically the basic widgets. Basically, in any project you won't miss this. That is the scaffold, which is basically shows the scaffold of your page. If you understand what a scaffolding is, basically it's just the main, basically the template of your page. That is what a scaffold is. Then we have an app bar. We've used an app bar there to show the title. Then we have we will look at the container later. Then we have a text, which we've used twice here in the title and in the body. Then we have buttons. We've used a button somewhere. Then we have something like images. Those are normally the common types of widgets. So there are other types of widgets that we can use in Flutter. They're called layout widgets. So let's take an example of one. Let's take an example of text of a center widget. So I'll just do a bit of a shortcut here. So we have a widget called center. Sorry. So if we create a widget called center and have the text as the child of our center widget, and we basically rerun the app, it will center everything in the app, and we'll have basically our text come in the middle. There are other types of basically layout widgets. For example, if you want to align things in a row, can see my screen can be seen?
Yes.
Okay, so let's say, for example, we have like want to show two texts. So and you want them to be one on top of the other or next to each other in a vertical way. So we will use another type of widget. Let's just delete what we have here, or maybe just copy the text and create another one. So we can create another layout widget called column. So column is just used to align things in a vertical manner. So a column, instead of having a child widget, it will have children, because a column may have multiple widgets within it. So if I put here and maybe duplicate this line 3 times, and then I try to run it again, you'll see that it will arrange my widgets in a vertical fashion. And there's another one called row, which you can just use to also organize things in a vertical way. Let me just reduce them so that we don't have that error showing there. So if I have three widgets and I want to show them in a line, basically in a horizontal line, I will just run it that way, and you'll see welcome, welcome, welcome. So a row, you may want to space them out, so it has something called a main axis alignment, and you can basically use a main function alignment enumerator and basically just put space between them. like that, and basically it will align your app differently. So that is how a row works in that, and that's how the column works. Other types of layout widgets are basically wrap. We have list view, we have grid view, we have stacks. So I'll just take a few examples. We have this one called wrap. Wrap is basically will print in a horizontal way until there's no more space, and then it will go to the next line. Let's say we have even more. Sorry, let me try to duplicate this line. So in its space, let me just put some spaces so that you can see. So it looks a bit confusing. So what wrap does, it will just create, like it will just put one widget after the next, one text to another until we don't have enough space here, and then to go to the next line. So basically, those are the kinds of widgets. Stack is usually used to, if you want something to come on top of another one. Let's now introduce that that widget called container. And the container can have a height, let's say 400, then a width of 400. But if we just do it like this, a container will have no color, so it will have nothing to show there unless we place, let's say we put a color and say. So in Flutter, in Flutter, there's a function called color, which is basically just a class that will be used to create different colors. So let me just say colors. Okay. So that we can see the container widget. So that is how it's looking. And so basically we were doing stack. So a stack will just position things one on top of the other in a visual way. This is, if you've never done a CSS, then this is something like a Z index, basically where we see one item coming on top of the other. So this is how you create a stack. So you can just basically, let's copy this container of ours, and then say have a stack here. A stack will have children. So the first element of the stack, if we do nothing with it, it will just show the widget as it is. But if we create another widget on top of next to this widget, let's make this have a smaller width, let's say 50 by 50, and then change the color to green. See that actually, instead of putting, you see, a column will put one next to the other vertically, and a row will put next to the other horizontally, but a stack will put the first widget will come first, then the second widget will come on top of it in a basically in the form of a perspective. I don't know how to put this. If there's anyone who did fine art, we used to call it perspective. So in basically, if you did math, then there's X, Y, and Z index. So Z index is actually basically coming like towards you. So if I say, I can basically change the alignment and say, maybe I want to align alignment dot center, or I may just place it anywhere. So if I do alignment to center, then the next item on the stack will come on top of the first one, but at the center of it. So this is just how you do a stack. So today we're just going through the common widgets. So apart from stacks and wraps and rows and columns, we also have something very specialized in that called a list view. So I'll just do an example of that. So a list view will have children. So let's just also introduce another thing called list view. You may have seen this very, very commonly. So it is called a list style. So let's just have a title here. So again, I'm a bit confused. Again, I need to have a widget and not a text. So I'll just put a text widget and put it here. So a list style is just like a column, but a list style is basically, you can arrange a list style, you can put it horizontal or vertical. That is the advantage of having a list style. You can put it, by default, it arranges its children horizontal, like basically vertically next to each other. But if you change the axis, then it will just show vertical, just like a row. And here we have like basically several list styles. Let me just duplicate and have multiple. So a list style will allow you to actually scroll through and basically have multiple, so that you can be able to even scroll out of the page. The advantage of a list style is that it reuses these widgets, and it basically it's actually quite intelligent in the form of which it renders things. We will go through this when we do a bit of an in-depth understanding of widgets while we are actually creating we are actually creating widgets. I can change this still to a container, to a column, but you'll notice we'll have a problem there. If I put a column, it will say that basically we have there's no more space to show. That means that a column will only show in the space, in the visible space, and our list view will actually allow things to scroll as we go. So that's why we used list view. Still, we can use a column, but list view is more specialized for showing things that if you have multiple number of, let's say you want to install to show all students in your class. So having a list view will be better because number one, we don't like, given there are different classes, maybe in campus you may want to show multiple classes and you don't know how many it will contain. A column is for something that you know how many it will contain, and you can actually know it will take this amount of space, but at least we will allow you to scroll and go through and basically just add more as they come. So this is good when you're using especially with the dynamic data. So what else do we have to cover? There's one called a grid view. A grid view is just a list view, but it will instead arrange things in the form of a table. Basically, you'll see like one next to each other, and then when there's no space again, it will place the next under it. We'll look at them later on when we are actually doing the practical work. The reason why I can't go through every widget is because number one, there are actually thousands of widgets in Flutter, in Flutter, which you can make use depending on, they are very specialized widgets. You can use, if you want this specific thing, then you look for this specific widget. So I can't go through all of them. So next, after going through the layout widgets, we will go through input widgets. So basically, input widgets are just widgets that are used similar to HTML, let's say HTML forms, which can allow you to put entry, basically data. So we have one of them is a text field. So text field will just show like that. Will just allow you to put to enter information into the field, which we can, let's say, I don't know if it has. decoration. I think my comp is hanging a bit. So a textful decoration, which will be used just basically more track. Yeah. Reason I can't type today. So inside I'm sure you've seen this app. So label text, which will be a string. Let's say first name. Can actually define so many things inside the text. Inside the default value, you can change the coloring. You just put a label, and you'll see that if I click on the text field, actually it will allow me to click that so that it will rebuild again. So you'll see that there's a first name here, and it will allow me to actually type in. And on a mobile app, it will actually show the keyboard, which will allow the user to type in. So the Flutter itself will recognize that you've used a text widget, and basically it will prompt the user for input. Okay, I think I've placed it wrongly. Wanted to create a copy here on the same list view, and I have a last name. So I'll just put an extra closing. So again, I try to run it. So you'll see that will allow me to put in input. There are other types of input, like let's say a checkbox. Have radios. So let's just arrange them in that fashion. So basically, these are just fields that will allow you to checkbox. Is it? So a checkbox will actually need a value. It can be true or false. So here we have a checkbox and a radio button. So this will be used to collect input from the user. So these are input widgets. Usually a checkbox, if you have a checkbox, usually you may have to use it inside a stateful widget so that you can keep track of whether it's true or false. And basically that's the reason why it doesn't work. It's because you don't have a function, or basically a callback function to handle the changes that happen to it. So to make that possible, we can be able to just change, because we need to track the state of the checkbox and the radio button. Then in that case, we need a stateful widget that will actually mutate the state and basically keep track of state. That's why it's very hard to use a checkbox inside a stateless widget. So you can just convert. Actually, if you're using VS Code or Android Studio, it will just allow you to convert the widget. If we can just do that, then you will see it will just create the same way that we had before, where it will have the home page will change to a stateful widget. It will only have a one function that will basically create state, and we'll have a state class. So inside the state class, we can just define basically a checkbox set, which will be actually a Boolean. If we say true, that itself will know that this is variables may have. Okay, so I have to declare that this is a variable. Or actually, to be more concise, I just need to put here Boolean, and then we'll have a radio state. So that's basically how we just decide whether to go with a stateful widget or a stateless widget. It depends on whether you have changing state or not. So here we've come to the realization that for us to use a checkbox or a radio button, we actually need to keep track of state so that we know whether it's true or false. Then we'll have a function called onChanged, which will actually react to the new value that has come in. So if the new value comes in from the checkbox, if someone taps it, what do we want to do? So as long as we put onChanged and basically create the callback function that will handle that change, you will realize that if we now rerun our app by basically just saving, you'll realize that our checkbox and radio buttons become active. All we need to do now is to tell it, instead of being true by default, we can now use the checkbox state, which is just basically another Boolean that we can use here. So checkbox state here, and here we'll just use the radio state. So that's that. If I run it again, you'll see that our radio will actually become, I don't know whether we put it as true or false. So for us to actually change, we need to mutate the value of this checkbox state on the radio state. So we'll again call set state. Set state will come with a callback function that will actually react to that state. So we can say the checkbox state, the new checkbox state is actually the value that has come in from the tap of the user. Same as here. So you can just say set state again, because that's how you can keep track of that change. If you don't put set state and just change the value, there's no way Flutter will know that that value has changed. And that's a very intelligent way of working. You don't want to actually rebuild the app if there's no value. So if we don't put set, there's no way Flutter will know that it needs to actually rebuild this field, because number one, the changes you make, they will just cause your app to rebuild. I think I have made a bit of mistake on the radio button. So I think it will need a bit more explanation. I will handle it later on when we are dealing with it, specifically later on when we are doing an actual demo. So let's remain with these three, and you can be able to do everything that pertains input. There are many types of input. You can create your own custom type of input, and basically with Flutter, you can just create your own everything. Let's say, for example, I want to create my own button. I can just come here and say, I want to create my own button. Let's say just create a new file and then create a button, and I'll just define everything. I'll put a container, I'll put text inside, and everything will be there. I don't want to do that right now because Flutter gives us a lot of a lot of different types of buttons, so you don't need to actually create yours. But if you need to, then you can just create your own buttons. So basically, that's to do with input fields. We'll look at more when we are doing actually, like, we are doing an actual demo where we'll be putting data and basically be able to collect and do ABCD with it. It will be in a later class. Today, we're just looking at the different types of widgets. So there are different types of widgets. Apart from that, there's actually styling widgets. These are widgets that are actually just used to change the look and feel of your app. So for example, you see here we have this this app that doesn't have any space between the edge of the screen and the inputs. So we can just we just need to do is basically wrap the whole thing inside a padding widget. Let's just get a widget, call it padding, and padding will have a child. So we will put the whole list view up to the end of the list view inside the padding widget. So all you do in Flutter is just layering one widget on top of the other. And actually, we've made a mistake here, and the reason why is because padding actually needs some more parameters. For example, at the actual padding. So the actual padding, for now, let's just take it as it is. There's a bit of explanation to come there. Let's say put a padding all round of, let's say, 20. And then if we put a padding there, you'll see now our app will be now have a bit of breathing space. You can see the padding around the widgets, and it looks actually better in this and in this at this start point. So we have here a checkbox. It's blue in color, and we have our app bar. It's blue in color also. This is because there's actually a widget, a class that will define all this color. So in our material app will cover everything inside your project. If you have multiple screens, they will all be contained inside the material app. And if you apply anything here, let's say a theme, it will apply everywhere. This is a way of just reusing your code instead of setting everywhere. I want this button to be blue, this button, all the buttons to be blue because my app is blue in color. You can just set it once and set your primary color here to blue. I can just as easily change it to red, and it will affect everything that is in that app. In fact, including our text box, including basically the surroundings and the cursor and everything that will come in that app will be in that color. But red is not usually a good color to use because it signifies error. So you better choose something like blue or any other color. You can just go, let's say, purple, and then the whole app will be purple in color, including everything that is set in the app. So that is basically how we do styling in Flutter. And it makes it Flutter makes it very easy to reuse those styles everywhere within your app. There are more to be set actually, and you can actually customize. Maybe I want my checkboxes to be green, but my app bar to be purple. So it will all come here and it will change here. And if you create actually another page here, it will just take the color of that you've set in your material app, since the material app usually is the parent app of all the apps that all the page, the parent page parent widget of all the widgets that you're going to use within your project. So basically, that is how you do styling. So when you ask yourself, how do I now? I have a very nice photo here. I want to put it inside my app. How do I do that? So that's the next thing you're going to look at. And all you have to do is now create an extra. Usually, it's created outside. Create an extra field, an extra directory for your assets. So I'll just create a directory here and call it assets. But you don't just put all assets, because if you put your assets here inside your app, it will basically make your app big, depending on the number of assets you put. So some assets you'll actually refer using a URL and say, like, I want to access maybe a photo from Google, so that your app doesn't contain all the pictures that you're going to use. This will just put here maybe your logo and things that are actually used within your application. Let's say we want to put an image down here. So I don't know if I have any interesting photos in my app. So let me just look. Interesting. I don't think I have interesting photos here. So I'll just copy this image and come here inside my assets and paste it inside. So here I'll have let me just call it Flutter assets. Doesn't really matter how I call it. And then I'll put that inside an assets folder. And then I can come here to my homepage. So that's how it looks. So I'll come here in my homepage and basically create another widget. Basically, I'll just add it next to the checkbox widget, say an image. So you remember when we did that tutorials, we discussed about named constructors. So the image widget comes with different types of constructors.Maybe if I want to refer from the image from an asset, basically just contained within my app, I will just put it here. Use the named constructor called assets in the image widget, and then I will just say it's contained in assets, and then slash the name of the image that I have there, which is let me just confirm, which is Flutter asset. .png. So that is basically how you do it. But before we go far, let's try to see if we will be able to, if it will show in our app. And you'll see that it is failing. And the reason why is because we need to include this asset to be compiled inside the app. If we don't do that, then it will not be compiled inside the app. And you do that by going to your configuration file, which is the pubspec.yaml, and basically just include your assets there. So pubspec.yaml will come and look inside it when we're done with images. So I'll just come here. All I need to do is declare the assets that I'm going to use. So here I will uncomment this assets line and just say my app uses assets, then slash, what's the name of our asset? Flutter asset.png. So that's that. I may need to, instead of doing hot reload, I don't know if I'll need to maybe I need to like reboot the whole thing, because for you to include a new asset, the app will need to recompile afresh. So I'll just click this button here to basically recompile afresh, to include that asset inside the compiled output of the project before it can be included inside the app. So you can see there we have the app included. Also, if you have multiple assets inside the folder, you just don't need to include each one by one. You can just say include the whole folder, which you can just write assets, then put a slash, and then it will include everything that is inside the assets folder. And then that is it. You see, there's no change there. There's no error, because if I add another asset, I don't have to declare it again as another asset I'm using, as long as it's in my assets folder, and I've declared that import everything that is inside assets to the compiled output of the project of the application. Then there's no need for me to declare every specific item, because you may have multiple. You don't have to come here and change every other time. So if maybe I want to include again, maybe I want to include an image from a URL, so image dot, let's say, image from network. I can include from network. I can include from basically the folders inside the file, the phone, if I want, and I can include in memory. Or like, let's say, for example, we want to use an image that has come from the network. Basically, you can just come to, let's say, search for an image. Search for images. Let me say, sorry, I didn't want to go to the website. Said I would just say to search for any Flutter image. Then go to images, look for an interesting image that you can use to actually show here. That's an interesting, what interesting image can we find? Any. Had to choose, so I will just choose one at random. So let's say we have this Flutter and that thing. Copy the image, the address of the image, or maybe just view the image first. Copy image address. So yeah, that's what I wanted. So if I just come and paste it here, it will come. I don't know if that should work. If that URL is correct, then you can see that we've just included simply that image inside our app. So in most cases, you'll be using the network image, because let's say, for example, you have users inside your app and you have a number of them. You don't want to store all their photos inside the app so that you can just be able to show their photos. Let's say, for example, you're making a social app like Facebook. You won't include all the people on Facebook, their profile photos and all the photos they have posted inside your app. Instead, you will be referring to them using a network image, and basically just be pulling them in from the internet and showing them to the user. Otherwise, your app will be very big if you have to include every other image that you want. And how about if you want to basically include a new photo? Will you recompile your app and push it to the store again so that you can get the new image to the users? That is not how you do it. We use assets for only images that are used as part of the structure of your app. So finally, we'll come to basically understand how we get how to set up everything in the pubspec.yaml. So I will first of all delete comments again because we don't need them. actually making this file a bit dirty, and we can make it a bit simple to understand. So let's delete the rest of it. Okay, so this is basically the structure of your pubspec.yaml. Pubspec.yaml, as we said, is the configuration file of your app. You'll put the name of your app here. The name of your app usually is it's not basically the user-friendly part of the app. That is not where we set it. Basically, it's just the name of the project, and usually it usually has underscores. Basically, just as we said, how we name files. So this is how we'll name the name of the project, and the project itself usually it has usually the name of the same name as the folder it's contained in. A description of your project, maybe this is my cool social app that I'm building. Then the version number, this is how it will be shown, and plus is just another concatenator. And the next thing you'll have is the build number. So if you've seen that this is build number 2. This is like basically version 2 build number 10 or something like that. Basically, this is it. This is version 1.1.0 build number 1. So environment sets up basically that version that you are running. You may need to update at one point. The dependencies, these are basically things that you need inside your app. You may need to actually import code from other people and be able to use them internally. Let's say you want to have a new function inside your app to do something new that your app doesn't have. You don't have to code it from scratch. There's a repository that is called pub. So I'll just go to pub.dev. So this is, if you've done JavaScript, this is like your npm.js, where you can get to use other people's code. For example, let me just take an example of let's come to our app. So maybe we don't need to show these images for now. I want to create a link here. Let's say Flutter. Let's just use a button. So you can use an elevated button or a flat button. There are different types of buttons. So I'll just use a text button. Then we'll have a child. Then we'll just put this. So here I've so let's have now first. Or let's call it Flutter website. So here I have a button, a new button that doesn't do anything right now. But I want, when I click this, it will navigate to the Flutter website. So here I need to create an on-pressed callback that will basically act when I basically tap on this button. So how do I do that? I may want to use something like a URL launcher. And basically, since my app doesn't have a URL launcher, I don't want to build one from scratch. I'll go to pub.dev and look for, I don't know if I messed again, so I'll just go to pub.dev again. I have thousands and thousands of packages inside pub.dev. from different developers. Some are from Google, and some are from basically the Dart team. Some are from the Flutter team. Some of like open source developers out there. So you can just take one and use them inside your app. So for us, we need a URL launcher for the app to basically launch a URL. So all I'll do is that I'll come here. You see the URL launcher. This is the page. There's information about this this specific package. So it was the last published. It was published last on March 25th. It supports Android, iOS, Linux, macOS, web, and Windows. This is the last actually item that I'm doing. I see we are out of time. So this is more information about the widget and how to use it. So you'll just see the documentation on how to use it. This is the number of likes. Basically, people are allowed to like the projects that they get to use and they find useful. So you can check the number of likes that people have. There are people who develop things that are not of good quality. So you can have multiple, maybe multiple URL launchers, and you want to select one. How do you select one? So you can just choose based on number one, the number of likes. So how many people have liked it? So that means it's a good one. How many pub points just shows the pub.dev actually scores your package, showing the different versions of the different it has metrics to measure how good your package is. And basically, if you click on the scores of this package, or just click here, you can see it has scored 130 out of 130. That means a very good package and it's well maintained, and it has all the documentation. It has like everything checks out, and basically everything is working fine. So you'll see others that will have 10 out of 130. You'll have some that will show even like 20 out of 130. So we'll just use that to choose which. And then we'll see popularity, basically how popular the package is. This is also another marker here that shows how good your package is. It's a Flutter favorite. So many people like it that they have actually chosen it to be one of the examples of the good packages you can use. Then you can just copy this, the name of the URL launcher and the version that we want. Come to our pub.dev, come to our pubspec.yaml, and basically just include it here in our URL. Include the URL launcher in our dependencies. So that means that you can be able to use it inside our app. And we wanted to use it to launch the Flutter link, the link that we created inside that button. So how do we use it? So in the documentation here, you will see how to basically launch a button, the button. So I'll just copy it very simply. Just copy inside everything that is inside. So you can go through the documentation maybe at your own time if you want to use any specific widget. So finally, I will come here and remember we learned about async and await in our last class. So I will use that to basically use to create to run this function because it's an asynchronous function. Then we need to import that package because we have declared that we're going to use it. And first of all, after declaring it, we need to basically run a download function. Sorry, if I've missed anything. Don't think I've missed anything yet. So first of all, we need to run a function called. So I'll just open the terminal and say Flutter pub get. Flutter pub get is basically a function that will get all the dependencies that you have declared inside your app. So I'll just press enter. Then it will take some time to actually go and download. We may have a number of packages you're depending on. It has taken 5 minutes, and it has I think it should be able to download as fast as possible. So it has downloaded the URL launcher that we declared. Another alternative is just to click here, pub-get inside your installer, and actually in different versions of code editors, you can just be able to save this file, and it will go and download the packages for you without even you running that function. But you just need to understand how to. So here, if I do that, then I can import it. So let me just do it manually so that you can see. There's shortcuts of how to do it. So I can say I'm depending on a package called URL launcher. Then I will depend on another. I'll pull in URL launcher.dat. If I pull that in, you'll see that my errors have decreased. So all I need to do is maybe create a URL that I'm going to call. So here I will just go to the HTTPS pub.dev. So pub.dev. Sorry, I wanted to go to Flutter Widgets, not pub.dev. So after declaring that and putting that, you can say, so first of all, it will try to see if it can launch that kind of URL. And if it can, then it will just launch it. If it doesn't, then it will throw an error. So let's just try to run our app again. So after including another package inside your app, you may need to rebuild from scratch again instead of just doing a hot reload. So it will build afresh and include that package inside your build output. So the app has started, and if I click right now, so there seems to be a bit of an error, misimplementation. So I may need to do a complete stop, then start, because I've included a new package. It will need to, basically iOS will need to build that package for iOS in order to run. So there are different kinds of packages. We will look at them next time when we are doing an in-depth installation. So you'll see iOS is building things behind the scenes. It's actually including the URL launcher as part of its iOS build. And after that, we can be able to run that. The URL launcher is a very interesting package because it can also, apart from just URLs, it can basically, if you include something like a phone number here, it can be able to just like call your dial app inside the, let's say, for example, I use tel to a phone number, and it will be able to basically launch the dialer with that specific link. It's treated as a link, and yet it's a phone number. So by just including this protocol that shows this is a telephone number, it will actually launch the phone call. If I include basically mail, it will try to send, for example, if I have another one called, let's just duplicate this first of all, comment this out, and if I have mail, or is it called mail to, it may be able to just launch, let's say, info. It may not be an actual email. So, and basically, as long as it's a protocol that you can understand. Here we are using HTTPS as the protocol. Here using telephone as a protocol. Here using mail to as a protocol. So the reason why we are running a can launch is because we try to see if that protocol is supported, and if it's supported, then it can be able to just call. And if it does, if it's not supported, then it won't be able. Basically, that's when it will throw this error. So here we have the URL that we want to test out. And if I click the URL, hope nothing fails now. So it will just go to your browser and open the Flutter app, the Flutter website. So I think widgets, and then I just wanted us to handle the common widgets. You'll realize sometimes that you'll develop your own widgets to do anything that But later on, you may come to discover that actually that widget already exists inside your inside Flutter, that they have built a simple widget that you can just import instead of building on. So you will have to make choices there, whether I want to build my own button or I want to use the one that's provided with Flutter. So that is basically it for today.